got it.
Yay!
I told you I had trouble with these all the time.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I'm fine.
Brilliant. It's, I've yet to have a martial artist on the podcast, and listen, I'm just as bad as everybody else. It's every time I come to the Zoom app, I'm always, what did I do last time? And I've been doing this for ages now as well, and I'm absolutely terrible.
I think I clicked every wrong button there was.
But we're here, so we are. So, yep, super excited. I always start by saying super excited, and then when I sit down, it's the most natural thing that comes to me. I always think, what's there something better to say than super excited? But I guess if you are super excited, saying you're super excited is the right thing to say.
It's valid, yeah.
So we are joined by Steve Rowe again today. Do you remember how long ago you were on the Martial Focus podcast?
No.
I'll shock you here, because I shocked myself this morning when I was looking at this 3 years ago.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. 3 years ago, and it was on the 7th of October. So I mean, we're not that sort of far away from being to the day. So we are, but yeah, brilliant. The thing that inspired me to have you on, over and above getting a chance to have this sort of access, which is one of the most brilliant things that the podcast has done, is just give me access to all amazing people like yourself, is to talk about the new books that you've got out. I've actually got a copy here for anybody that is watching on the YouTube channel. If you're just listening on Spotify or on Apple, it's a copy of Steve. How long's it been out now, Steve? How long's this?
God, it's not long. It's probably
a couple of months. Yeah. Okay. So I've got a copy of Soft Front, Strong Back, which is Steve's new book, and well, you also have another book on the go, just about to be published as well, which hopefully we can chat about. So, right, let's get started. And it wasn't until I took the book off my bookshelf this afternoon to come up and speak to you that my first question actually came to me. Soft front, strong back. What does it mean?
I think it embodies everything that I do. So you could say it's the same as yin yang. You could say it's the same as Goju. It's the balancing of body, mind, and emotions. It's being able to be strong enough and powerful enough to present a soft front, to be able to be kind, to have patience, tolerance, compassion, good manners, be polite, to be able to put that in front, but also to have the strength to be able to back it up. I think one of the biggest things is that peace is not natural; it's earned. So we have to train quite hard to be able to keep and maintain that that peace. So having the strong back is very important, and particularly for us as martial artists, it's important to have the skill. It's important to have the power, which is really a strong spine, a strong back. So you can have a soft front to the public and for life in general. Probably 99.9% is a soft front, but we train very hard to have the strong back to be able to keep peace.
Straight away that brings, and I know he's quite a divisive character, but Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, and it's one of the things that I actually really like. I like a lot about what he says. Some of his more recent stuff I've started to sort of disagree, but anyway, it is what it is. But he often talks about martial artists in that sense, that you have to have that ability for, well, a word you used the other day, and we were chatting on Facebook, was venom. You have to have that capability before you can be peaceful. Peacefulness or being peaceful doesn't mean being weak. In his opinion,
exactly.
Quite the opposite. Is that something you would agree with? It's pretty much what you've said there, to be fair to you.
Yeah, sure.
It's because it's something that I've spoke to a number of people about, and even some parents in my Taekwondo school, as these sort of conversations come up, that I think there's a confusion nowadays with regards to even it might just be the terminology, actually, to be fair. Weakness, peace, those sort of words, and what they actually all mean. But I think that's what you're trying to get to, even with the title of the book. And
That's right. That's exactly it. I mean, over the many years, I've gone to uh, many Buddhist monasteries. I've gone to meditation groups, and quite often you would get people sitting there. You'd look at them meditating and think, "My God, you're so calm, you're so peaceful. I really wish I was like you." You know, but the moment anything in their life rattles them, they just go to pieces. And I think that that was the thing that made me realize that that strong back is very important. But we need to have emotional intelligence. And of course, teaching a lot of police, presidential bodyguards, and so on, they have to have that soft front and strong back. Even if you're working on the door of a nightclub in these days, in the old days, you could just bash someone and no one would really know. But these days, everyone's got a camera out and you've got CCTV and so on. So it's very, very important to be able to deal with things in the right way. So, and of course, they are the peacekeepers as well. So, in effect, we're all peacekeepers and we need to keep our own peace. But it's not just in violence. So, violence is a very small part of life. 99% of life, we're having to deal in business, we're having to go to meetings. There's always someone that wants something from you. If you go to buy a car, the salesman's trying to convince you what he wants you to do. I was going to say the bank manager, but we never get to see them these days. But anywhere you go, there's somebody trying to convince you of something. Everybody wants to manipulate you. So I think, one, to have done the meditation enough to be mindful and to be insightful, to have insight, to be able to see the truth within everything that you're looking at, and to be able to see the truth in other people, means that you can keep that nice, polite, kind and caring front, but nobody's going to manipulate you. You're always going to go to where you know you need to be, and that takes a lot of backbone.
indeed, I, one thing I'm going to say here, uh, I always, I always take what you say seriously and pay attention. And I think you're quite a sort of deep person and lots of experience that we're going to talk about today as well, hopefully. But I often forget how funny you can actually be as well. So I've got my coffee here, as I always do during the podcast.
I saw that. I hate people on it. Yeah, on the
But
cup.
there's a wee bit of there's a wee bit of irony here. This is the one that I use when I'm doing the podcast. But I need to time my sips because I nearly put my laptop up already there with the bank manager joke. So I'll time them a wee bit better. Right. Okay. You've actually already touched on a few of the notes that I wrote out this morning, which is brilliant. Uh, so it gives me a good chance to jump into them. You mentioned there about the the people meditating, and do you know, if you'll allow me, I'll speak from my own personal experience here. People meditating, practicing their mindfulness, and doing their exercise, and all of these positive things that we know, even science proves nowadays, we know work, we know are at the very sort of base of us just being healthier. But as soon as the SH1T hits the fan, it's all out the window. And then it generally takes me a couple of weeks to realise, hold on, the fact that I'm not practicing daily, the fact that this isn't happening is probably contributing to the fact that it, that when things do go wrong, as they do on a daily basis for us all,
Mm.
it goes out the window. So I think my next question to you is maybe how do you personally, or how do we, everybody, get better at not being in that position? Not being in a
Yeah.
position where it's all just airy fairy and on a very superficial level.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably put over 100 martial arts instructors through my Tai Chi coaching program. And one of the basic tenets of that is the fact that, in the first place, I don't charge a lot, but I charge enough that they know they're paying. Secondly, they come once a month, but they know that they've got to practice consistently through the month, because when they come back the following month, I'm going to be checking. So the problem we often have running martial arts classes is people come and go, everything's in dribs and drabs, and the kind of consistency that we're looking for is kind of never there. With the coaching program, it is there because they don't have any choice. And the way that I teach it, we begin with mindfulness, and it's the reminder that mindfulness is not something you do for 20 minutes a day or an hour a day or whatever. Mindfulness is something you've got to maintain all of the time that you're awake. And therefore, to watch your mind, watch your behavior, watch your thoughts. You would think any senior martial artist would have those qualities. You would expect those qualities really from a senior martial artist. But you and I know that it's actually quite rare. And then
Yeah,
they all put in their adverts, don't they? Learn concentration, good behavior, all the things that mindfulness gives, but they don't teach it. When people go to classes, they're taught aggression and fighting and street and all this kind of thing. The thing that they advertised is very rarely actually taught. When I first started doing karate, you'd walk into the hall, it would be Grits, Cesar, Mokoso. And we'd all kneel down and would be sitting there with our hands on our thighs, not having a clue. I'd be sitting there thinking, my legs are killing me. Uh, I'm in agony here. What the hell am I supposed to be doing? No one ever taught me.
yeah,
And often I say to other martial artists, do you meditate? And they go, yes, at the beginning of every class. I say, have you been taught how to do it? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing? No one knows. And the same with even with Tai Chi, it's the same. You know, you're taught your standing postures, but nobody actually tells you what you're supposed to be doing. So I would say 99.9% mindfulness is not taught. Emotional intelligence is not taught. You know, these are the things that I begin with. So to to be mindful, you know, I love the English word of mind because it means to take care. Often when you teach abroad, it doesn't translate into other languages. When you say mind, they interpret it as brain. You know, but to be mindful, to actually to take care of your mind, to take care of your thoughts, to take care of your behavior, to watch everything that you're doing, what's going on, that teaches you to be mindful. That's just the first stage. When we talk about then good posture and good breathing, they're things that you should have all the time as well. So we know that good posture leads to good breathing. You can breathe deep if your posture's right. So when you're drawing the diaphragm down, you're filling the lungs with air, it's getting more oxygen into the blood, more oxygen into the brain, and your mind can be more aware, focused, sensitive, intense. So in so doing, the good posture and the good breathing and being able to develop the awareness and focus and sensitivity means that you become that person. But you can't become that person by doing 20 minutes a day. If you're awake for 16 hours, you've got to do it for 16 hours a day. And every time you lose it and it drops, you've got to get it back again. And you just keep going through that process. It happens all the time. The two enemies of the mind are apathy and distraction. So we say, right, I'm going to be mindful, you know, and then all of a sudden we start thinking about something else. We're distracted by what's going on, or we just feel lazy. We just slip into a kind of stupor, you know.
yeah.
So I think that it's a long answer to the question, probably, but it,
No,
mind.
we're
Yeah,
definitely getting there.
so mindfulness is something that you practice. Anapanasati, the art of breathing, if you like, is a very important part of that. Good posture, good breathing, calms the body, then calms the emotions, and finally it calms thoughts and brain. So that gives us a mindful state. And when you get into a mindful state, when the activity of your thinking mind is reduced right down, that allows the real you to come through. And that mindfulness leads to insight. So you won't get insight and wisdom until you've got mindfulness first. So I encourage my students to do that all of the time. And I'm lucky, I've had a lot, sort of 100 high grade martial artists from all different martial arts, Kung Fu, Krav Maga, karate, and so on. They've all gone through that process now. So that we've kind of spread that out quite a bit, which I'm quite happy with.
Yep.
And the book kind of supports that, really.
This might be twofold, I guess. It's one of these ones where I'll maybe pass comment and then ask a question. So my first thought is that, and again, my first thought, and maybe I'm speaking for the general public, is that sounds like a hell of a lot of effort. That sounds like a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of stamina. And
can I stop you there?
Yeah, of course. That's why you're here. Yeah.
That's a question that or a comment that a lot of people make. And actually, my answer is it's not, because it's actually quite simple. Where do you start? Can you focus your mind and be aware for one breath? And if you can do that, you're already on the road. And everybody can do that. You can do it for one breath. And when you've done it for one breath, then do it for the next breath. And when you can do it for that breath, do it for the next breath. And just keep it going as long as you can. When it slips away, remind yourself to bring it back again. But to be in the present moment, which is what we're aiming for, we don't want to think I'm meditating for 16 hours or I'm meditating for an hour. That would be crazy. That would be self-defeating. To exist solely in the present and be focused and aware, one breath. So my answer to that is, actually, it's very simple. There's nothing difficult in mindfulness. There's nothing difficult in meditation. All you've got to do is one breath at a time.
I don't know if I mentioned. In fact, I probably didn't mention this, because the story I'm going to tell, I'm pretty certain happened after you were on the podcast the first time. And a friend of mine who is, and I always feel as if I have to justify him in that. I think as soon as you say yoga teacher, mindfulness teacher, a lot of people start rolling their eyes already, and that. Right. I've probably done the complete opposite of what I was trying to do, but he really is a mindfulness teacher. And I'll mention him. His name's Martin Stepic, and quite famous up in Scotland for his mindfulness. And I went to one of his practices, and he won't mind me sharing this. He shared it publicly, and he's also shared it on the podcast as well. He was a couple of days away from losing his sister to cancer, and they were very close. And he'd been to the hospital and pretty much sat with her for the full afternoon. And then he had to leave because he had to come to teach his class. And it just so happened it was one of the nights that I was able to attend. And I remember him coming to class and telling the class about his sister, and then talking about the rattle of the rain on top of the car. It was raining at the time. And the joy that was actually able to bring him from leaving his sister, who was, I believe she actually passed away the next day or the day after, so really at the end of her life, to come to teach us in the class. And my first instinct was, there's no way in God's earth that I could have been thinking about anything else. And it's the same with a lot of the things that I worry about. They become all-consuming. But what Martin was able to do for that mindful moment was concentrate on the tick, 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 tick on top of the car with the rain. That's clearly possible because he's able to do it, and you're able to do it. Are we all able to do it? That's what you're telling me sitting here just now? It sounds.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems is a lot of people complicate it, and they do it on purpose. it's a business. It's a huge business. You go on social media and arrange courses and so on. There's there's a lot in it, and there's a lot of people that will um, put everybody else down to elevate themselves, particularly in qigong, tai chi, meditation. There's a kind of superiority with them, and it's almost like they're looking down. What you people don't understand is it's much more complicated than that. That's what's kind of behind all the things that they're saying and writing. And therefore, people kind of make them godlike figures and their acolytes, but they'll never ever be as good as their godlike figure at the top.
Yep.
I'm doing the opposite. What I'm saying is it's not difficult. It's really, really simple. Just throw everything else out of the way and take one breath and just focus on that one breath. You will be completely in the moment. Everyone can do that. And
Yep.
like I say, then do another one, and as long as you can do it, but stay in that one breath. Don't start thinking about the next breath or the one after that. Stay in that one breath, and then pass to the next one, and then pass to the next one. See, for us on my coaching program, that's the foundation of doing Tai Chi. Because if when you're doing a form, if you're thinking about the next technique and the next technique, you're not totally in the moment in the technique that you're practicing.
Yep.
We have to internalize skills. So we're given, if you like, a list of skills that we have to think about, use our thinking mind. We have to practice how to do it. And it's a little bit like doing the dots that you've got to join up for a drawing. In the first place, you learn the dots, don't you? And then you join up the dots.
Yep.
Then you can get your crayons out and colour it in. Then you can
Yep.
get your oils out and make a masterpiece. And when you become the artist, you can release your soul through what you're doing. That's what an art is.
Yep.
In Tai Chi, we go through the same process. So with each set of skills you learn to internalize them. Now, quite often in life, when we internalize skills, that's where those two enemies of the mind, apathy and distraction, come in. If you're driving somewhere that you go to every day, often you get there and you can't remember driving there because you did it on automatic pilot, or you was thinking about something else, or just in a stupor.
Yep.
But so in Tai Chi, it's important, once you've internalized the skills and you know what to do and your mind becomes free, that's when you've got to really practice your mindfulness to be totally and completely within each technique. And you've not internalized something until you couldn't do it any other way. So when you've practiced the skills enough and you've become the skills, then you go from having a list of things to practice to only noticing when something's wrong. So if you read the Tai Chi classics, there's a lot of information as to how to do Tai Chi, but then at the end, it'll say, all you've got to have is three things: no collapses, no protrusions, and no leaning. So when you've internalized that and you can do the form, your aware mind will notice when something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It'll pick it up. So you're going from thinking to perceiving, perception.
Am I? That to me makes sense. I want to clarify that. It then becomes our heartbeat and our breathing are two good. And again, I'll ask the question, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Our heartbeat and breathing are two of those. I think the only two things that we don't really have. Like they happen when we're sleeping, for example. They happen all the time until you take your last breath, so to speak. But are you saying that you want to get your practice to, so you only notice your breathing when it goes wrong?
Yeah.
Unless you're being mindful of your breathing, you only notice your heart rate speeding up, or if it went really low, because it's just such an internal part, an everyday part. So our practice, whether it be of Tai Chi, Taekwondo, mindfulness, maybe no mindfulness, karate, you should get to a position where it's so, I'll use the word ingrained, maybe that's the wrong word, that it becomes so natural that you only notice when it's not. Am I getting there? Is that right?
It's a bit confusing, but I think I get where you're going.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, we've got a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing is the one thing that is in both. So you can think about and control your breathing using your mind. And in so doing, and then of course, when you're not thinking about it, as you say, when you're asleep, you breathe anyway.
yeah,
So having control over something, you've actually got a crossover to the neural system that works your heart, your kidneys, your liver, and all your internal organs, which normally you've got no control over. But with breathing, you've got that crossover. So you can actually slow your system down with good posturing, good breathing. You can put all the organs into the right position. You can make them function better. So you're actually getting into a position where you can increase the health that you couldn't otherwise get to. That's why breathing plays quite an important part. As I say, it calms the body, then the emotions, and then the mind as well.
brilliant stuff. The next wee bit I want to move us on to, if we can, and I don't know if I was perhaps brave enough to 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 broach this properly the last time, and I want to do the podcast justice. I want when I have someone like yourself on, uh, I'm I'm more confident now that I want to do the episode as much justice as I possibly can. And then you covered it all in your book, and that meant, well, it was out there, and I had no sort of fear of talking about it. Two areas of your life that I'd like to discuss, with the idea being that they both got you not got you to where you are just now, and you had quite a colourful early life as far as being a teenager and young sort of 20 somethings with regards to aggression and
Mm.
violence, uh, fighting. Uh, that's the first part I'd love to touch on. And then through your different health issues recently, uh, there's been real suffering there, which everything that you're talking about already and everything you're teaching are have come from that, or in the case of suffering, have helped you with that.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, so, what one do we tackle first? Let's tackle the younger years,
Well, I was
or
going to say
actually link it to yourself, whatever you think's the
we
best
we
way of
can we can kind of blend them in
Indeed,
all
right,
into one
perfect,
thing.
perfect.
Um, I think I lived a normal South London kid's life. I don't think it was anything exceptional. Um, there was all the normal stuff that you'd have kind of living around that area of that time. Um, any fights were much the same as probably any other kid had. I bunked off school a lot, so I ended up um, probably getting myself into trouble, but not too much trouble. I don't think I was that bad a kid.
Yeah,
Um, my my father was a kind of World War II hero, commando guy who went into the prison service. So he was quite strict, and he kind of dealt with most problems physically as well. He was that kind of guy. So that was my upbringing. But I I left home very early, and eventually went into the fire brigade, and then from the fire brigade went into the security services. And in security, I covered just about, rather than being just a doorman, I ended up doing everything. So any security service you could possibly think of, I've been involved in at some point or other. Um, which led me to, when I started karate, it led me into quite a kind of South London violent street fighting type club.
yeah,
And actually, in the next book, I cover this quite extensively because it's the karate aspect, and there was quite a bit of violence, really, I suppose, right the way through, and I was taught to deal with everything with violence as well. So really, right up until I was in my early 20s, I'd got up to second dan in karate, and still working in the security industry. Fighting was the only, and self defense really was the only thing that I thought about. wasn't interested in kata or anything like that. It was just
Yep.
we didn't even wear gloves or anything. I had a massive injuries, which I won't list because it's probably one of the books anyway. But the point I'm getting to was when I got to that point, I kind of knew that I'd end up in prison or something like that, you know. So because of the character I was a very fiery character as well, and I felt really kind of troubled. I couldn't see a way out of it until obviously David Carradine came on the television with Kung Fu, you know, and because at school I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate. And I've got to be honest, I didn't like my family, I didn't like my school, I used to go to discos and nightclubs and stuff. I didn't like going, but there's nothing else to do.
Yep.
You end up getting into trouble because I had a lot of energy to burn off, but nowhere to put it and nowhere that I could focus. I was completely out of step with life. So in hindsight, you know, I was really quite depressed, although I wouldn't have come across that way.
Yep.
So, but when I saw the Shaolin Temple, that really hit me, you know, and I was kind of that is because it's a mixture of martial arts and a philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and that really got to me. And that was when I went to my first Tai Chi instructor, and he was a very nice guy. He gave me a copy of the Tao Te Ching, and I'd never read a book in my life. And I opened that book, and I was kind of, wow, I actually understand this. You know, I've given the book to loads of other people since, and they're like, I don't get it. But it really got to me. It really hit me. And I think that from that moment on, I started to study Zen, Buddhism, Taoism, anything to do with the mind, spirituality, or whatever. And luckily, it was kind of only a couple of years later that Toru Kamizawa left the Wadaru group and formed Terra Karate Kai, which was the first multi-style karate group. Up until then, because I was in a kind of kickboxing, street self-defense type karate club,
Yep.
I'd no access to better instruction. I'd taken over the clubs from my instructor, and so when that came along, I could actually join a reputable association, which led me into the collusions with Toru and being taught by Toru and having private lessons, which led me to Fuji and Tai Chi. And that's where I got the karate, Iaido, Tai Chi, and that changed me. So, you know, I think there's a kind of a steady flow. I think I write a little bit about it in Soft Front, Strong Back, and even more so in the next book.
If you can hold your train of thought there and let me jump in,
Mm.
the reason why I asked this goes right back to the initial conversation that we had, and this is why I think it's so important to ask about this, because there's just simply more uh, substance to hearing the lessons you have now as a contrast.
Yeah,
It's, it's if someone says I'm going to teach you about the mind, I'm going to teach you about peace, I'm going to teach you how to interact peacefully and respectfully with people, and that's something that's the only thing they've known, it just doesn't have the same
I agree.
power as hearing how people, you as the subject today, have transitioned into that.
Yeah.
That's the reason why
So
I really harp onto
yeah,
this.
and therefore it concerns me when I read all the rubbish on social media about violence and fighting and application and whether something would work in the street. And the majority of people don't even have the experience anyway. I look at half the stuff they're doing, and that'd never work anyway. You know, if you look at what's going to work in the street, it's as we said before, it's venom. Venom is the first thing. You know, if you ideally strategy comes first. You know, don't get into a fight. The mindfulness of being polite to people, being nice to people, all these things count into not getting into trouble in the first place. But when it actually comes to the crunch, you're really talking about number one is sheer venom. The most venomous person is the one that will normally win in the street, and that's got to be followed up with by power. and that must come from skill and technique and control as well.
Yep.
So, and I think that, so when I look at the way a lot of things are put forwards, I don't talk a lot online about fighting and violence simply because that's not where I want my mind to be. I've not got a lot of interest, but some of it does irritate me.
Yep.
And I think that, and then the same clubs that are talking about violence and, you end up, I don't know, flat on your back or shitting teeth or whatever, it is, you can't then in the same breath talk about being polite and respectful and kind and so on. So I think that what people are advertising seems to be one thing, and what they're then talking about and doing is something entirely different. There's nothing good in violence. Violence begets violence. And we see that at the moment in the Middle East. We can
Yep.
see it in the Ukraine and Russia. It just doesn't help. Someone has got to stop violence, and the only way that you're ever going to do that is by taking a step back and not being violent, not pushing violence, not talking about violence all the time. We can still develop and build a strong back, we because it takes power to negotiate, doesn't it? It takes power to talk. It takes power to create peace. So we're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be pushed around. But by the same token, someone's got to stop being violent. And I think in the martial arts, there's way too much violence, way too many people talking about violence. And most of them don't even know what they're talking about. They haven't been there. And the kind of stuff they're doing doesn't work anyway. So, that's my thought. I've been there,
Yep.
I've done it. I've got no interest in it anymore. But what I am interested in doing is talking to good senior martial artists and putting across a way that you can develop what most people would expect. If I looked at a fifth, sixth, seventh Dan, I would expect someone with a soft front and a strong back. I would expect somebody that would be negotiating for peace. I would expect somebody to be polite, kind, thoughtful, and there doesn't seem to be many around. Most of them, the moment someone rattles their cage, they're spitting venom everywhere.
I do. The next part of that major question I had, I just realised I'd actually wrote it down on my notes here as a question, and I'll ask this very simple question, which is also a very complicated question, and it might open up the next part of the conversation. And I'll tell you what I've written. It's, what is suffering?
Which is, again, I did, as you probably know, I did a talk in here just yesterday, and it started around that actual phrase, because I think that the Buddha was very clever in the sense that we'll kind of know his story as a prince who suddenly realized that everyone was going to get sick and dying, and he went to visit all the meditation masters, very much like nowadays, and you go and visit them all and you realize that none of them have really got the real thing. And he ends up going away and saying, I'm going to sit under a tree until I get it. And when he got it, he realized that it was so simple that everybody missed it. And it's like the kid that sees the emperor's not wearing any clothes, and put yourself in his position, So therefore he gets enlightened and he meets some of his friends and they all go, oh, you look radiant, you look great. What have you been doing? You've been going to the gym or something. And he says, I'm fully enlightened. And they all went, yeah, piss off, who think you are? So he then thinks, how the hell am I going to teach this? So he meets up with one of his other friends and he said, I don't know what to do. It's actually something so simple, but I don't think anybody's going to get it. How am I going to teach it? And his friend said, what you have to remember is that some people only have a little dust in their eyes, and they're the ones that will understand what you're talking about. And that led to him doing the first teaching in Benares Park, what they call the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And what was clever was he had to teach mainly to people that couldn't read or write, but he also had to teach to the literates and the people of higher castes. And what he said in a way, was so profound, because obviously they were very tied into the caste system, and he taught and loved everybody wherever they come from. You can imagine how profound that would have been at the time, and
Yeah.
dangerous.
Mhm.
But he
Just ask
he
Jesus.
based it, yeah, he based it on suffering. He realized that it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, everybody encounters suffering, and it's a problem that everybody's got. So that led to the Four Noble Truths. And of course, the first thing that he said was, there is suffering. And everybody goes, yeah, yeah, I get that. And he goes, but that has to be understood. And they're like, so, yeah, what does that mean? Yeah. And then he says, there's a cause of suffering. And the cause of suffering is desire. But it's desire to have something or want something, or to not have something or not want something. So desire has got two sides to the coin. There's attraction and aversion. And of course, that gets people to start thinking, actually, Christ, yeah, you're suffering if you haven't got something and you really want it.
Yep.
And then if you get it, you're suffering because you're trying to protect it and keep it. And so suffering is not just stick a needle in your eye. It covers a very broad spectrum, and particularly if you look at it as attraction and aversion, that kind of covers it all. And then he said, there is an end to suffering, or you could really say an end to any unnecessary suffering. And he refers to the two arrows. The first arrow is the suffering you can't avoid in life. So there's nothing you can do about it. The second arrow is the one that you can do something about, and that's to not suffer about your suffering. Don't be angry about your anger. Don't be anxious about your anxiety. So then he gave his fourth noble truth was a code of living that actually I think is perfect for martial artists. So he gives 8 points. So this above my head here is a Dharma wheel.
Yep.
And he did it as a will because it's not a path. Though they say the eightfold path, it's not a linear path. You can't have one without the others.
Yep.
And of course, they're all different translations, but the first one often translated as right view, or you could say right perspective. To have a perspective that encompasses, is broad enough to encompass everything. Probably if you've got that right, all of the others will be in place anyway. The second one is right resolve. People often translate it as intention, but I think resolve's probably a better word, because the two go together, don't they? The broadness of your mind and the resolve, as we were talking about with mindfulness, you need to keep it going the right amount, and so on. The next three are about behavior, and right speech. Obviously, we know speech can cause a lot of trouble. Right livelihood. If you earn your living by cheating or hurting other people, you would never get there. So you've got to contribute to society rather than draining it, rather than taking from it. And right behavior. So your conduct, obviously, very important. And the last three were to do with meditation, and so right effort. Too much and you fail, too little and you fail. Right mindfulness, to be able to maintain that state of absorption as such, to allow an insightful mind to operate, and concentration.
It's
Without
no
any of those, you'd fail.
it's no coincidence, and I'm sort of smiling inside here. One of the favourite posts that come up, and you share the memory every year when it comes round, is I'll mess this up, but you'll get the gist of it. Steve Rowe's rules for life, I think you call it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's coincidental that, and this is about walking the walk again, isn't it? It's about most of them are very relatable to those points. They're
Yeah.
very relatable. And it's brilliant to see that, as I say, you're, as a sensei, guru, whatever people are calling you, that you're living that life, because there's so much, myself included, there's so much. Do you know, actually, I put a wee box around this next bit. There's so much, and I mentioned it on one of your Facebook posts the other day. There's so much expression and not enough perception. And
Yeah.
we're all guilty of that. But you,
Well, so just
you live it.
dialing back, one point there. None of us are perfect. I think it would be more accurate to say I try to live what I teach.
Yeah.
And I think, the original finger pointing at the moon that Bruce Lee cocked up quite a bit, the original one came from the Buddha.
Yeah.
And what he actually meant was, don't look at the finger, look at the moon. Don't look at the teacher, look at the teachings. Because any human being obviously isn't perfect. So you could easily be disappointed in a teacher and therefore miss all that heavenly glory from the moon,
And right there is our small snippet. That's what I'm putting up on Facebook. Okay, so your personal suffering, which you obviously talk about extensively in the book. I think the question that's probably came to my mind as I've listened to you there is a very similar thread of question to what's went before. I think the simple answer is, well, I practice what I preach. But if we can be a wee bit more in depth, how did your martial arts experience, how did your teachings, how did your mindfulness help you through this? I think it's safe to call it the suffering that you've went through over the last number of years with different health issues, etc.
Yeah, I mean, as I said in the book, I've had 25 surgeries, 3 life-threatening sepsis attacks, which means that I literally was at death's door 3 times. Each time I had a sepsis attack, I spent 5 months in hospital. The last one, when I had the amputation, was during COVID. So, I mean, they were quite testing times. And of course, after the amputation, I finally got out and I thought, oh, thank God for that, it's all over. And the final blood test I had, they told me I had cancer. And so after that, I was nicknamed Lucky, like the dog with one ear. And
Uh,
but
what do
so
you
yeah,
do? I mean, you can't. What do you do apart from laugh at that? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's anyway. Sorry, carry on. My apologies.
And it's so much more than that, because during all that period of time, there was so much that went wrong every single time. So yeah, I've had my fair share of health issues that also caused a lot of suffering, and I've been, say, quite close to death on a few occasions. One actually where they called the family in to tell them that I probably wouldn't survive, and so on. But as my nickname was Lucky, I did. How I dealt with it really was, I think I would have died without the mindfulness and meditation training, without having the right kind of perception of life. I don't think I would have survived, because it would have been too much. The pain at times, physical, emotional, it was on a scale of 1 to 10, it was 110. And so having to deal with a lot of that, I used the mindfulness method all of the way through, and I had to maintain it all the time I was awake, because I had no choice. And I was saying to the group, there is so much that you couldn't understand unless you go through it. But even having your leg amputated, I was blue lighted inside. So I went to see a doctor about my leg, and I said to him, "Is it possible to have it done privately? I've got insurance." And he said, "This is my advice: go home, dial 999, and get blue lighted into hospital. Otherwise, in 24 hours, you will be dead." And that was during COVID, and so that was exactly what I did. So you go into the surgery, you have the surgery, and when you wake up, obviously you don't know you've had your leg amputated. So you look down, and the shock of not seeing a leg there is unbelievable. But it doesn't stop there, because every night you go to bed and you go to sleep, you dream you've got two legs. So every morning you wake up, you go through exactly the same trauma again and again and again every single day.
Yeah.
So dealing with those sort of problems, and I'm on a couple of amputation Facebook groups, and the torment that some of them people go through is awful. And it's nice to be able to advise some of them, to be honest.
Yep. Yep.
But I think one of the first things is to live in the moment requires a lot of acceptance. I'm not who I was. I will never be who I was. So there's no point in me going back there unless it's happy memories. But if it causes pain, I don't go there. There's no point in going there. I'm not that person anymore. So forget that, Steve. I'm not that person. So what happens in the future, I don't know. So there's no point in going there either. So basically, I have to accept exactly who I am, where I am right now. And I think that acceptance is a really big part, because only then can you actually start to live. Otherwise, you're in the past as to who you was. You're bemoaning the fact of all the things that you can't do. I can't go and do seminars like I used to. I can't travel all over the world like I used to. I can't spar. I can't demonstrate technique. There's so many things I can't do. That would be overwhelming. If you'd said to me, 10 years ago, you've got a choice. You can either have a leg amputated or die. Which would you pick? I'd have picked death,
Yep.
which I think, to be honest, most people would. So, when it comes to it, you realize this is a huge challenge. I mean, as you know, Dave Courtney blew his brains out the other day.
Yep.
And people were saying to me, oh, mental health. And I said, I knew Dave. He wasn't suffering from mental health. He had rheumatoid arthritis, and then he decided that was the point that he'd lived his life, and that was the point he was going to go. I think it was actually, to my mind, it was actually quite a good choice.
Yeah, I understand that.
I don't blame him at all. And so it's up to you. It's your choice, and you reach that point in life. And my thought, with Dave was, Christ, he had rheumatoid arthritis. I've got really bad arthritis in every single joint. I've got a leg amputated. I've been through all this other stuff, and yet I choose to be here. What the bloody hell's wrong with me?
Do you
But
know,
I can't help facing a challenge.
this is really quite. It's really quite a poignant conversation for me. I was in a position. I mean, it's not even comparable. I'll say that up front, and when I say it, it's obviously not comparable. But I had a couple of wee health issues that actually weren't health issues in the end, because when I got all the tests done, there was actually nothing serious at all. But the reason why I mention that, the only reason I mention that is I get, if you give me advice or we talk about it, then it's part of the show, and if it's part of the show, it goes out to others, and that's why I talk about myself sometimes. Again, if I went to the doctors, and I'm much better at this now because of life, I guess. If I went to the doctors on the Monday for a blood test, and they said the results will be back on Friday, I'd be phoning on Wednesday. I'd be phoning on Thursday, and obviously I'd be phoning on Friday. And I couldn't tell you one part of my life that I would have enjoyed until those blood tests came back. There just wasn't. What you end up doing is you end up just watching stupid TV like The Office or something that's completely, you can take your brain out. You don't, but it passes the hours. And this was over stuff that most people wouldn't even consider being too serious. But then again, I look at you, and you're on this sort of journey. You're on this journey where you've been very public about, I'm going for this test, I'm going for this result, and then I watch you for the rest of the day, and you're sharing knowledge, you're sharing clips, you're putting teachings up, etc., etc., and your life is carrying on.
Mm.
That to me is pure mindfulness. It's pure. I'm Friday's blood test results are Friday's blood test results, but I've
Yeah,
got Monday to live. I've got Tuesday to live, Wednesday
exactly.
and within them, I've got every hour to live, and within them, I've got every minute to live, and every second, and life just goes on, and you can
Mm.
get pleasure. The same way Martin, my friend, got pleasure from the rain, tip, tip, tip off his car as he drives away from his dying sister. Uh, this potential is out there. You're living proof that this is available to people, and I want it for myself, and I want it for everybody else. And it
Yeah.
blows my mind what you especially are able to achieve uh, during this sort of time. I guess I just wanted to say that to you, but I don't even know
Mm.
where I was going with that thought, other than I'm
Well,
in
I
all
can
the
I can
philosophy.
pick it up. Yeah, I mean, I can pick it up because we were sort of saying to the group, people talk about being happy. They say the sort of scientific definition of happiness is that life must have meaning and purpose. So it's not about money, it's not about love, it's not about the things that we have rammed down our throats all day by the media. But you need meaning and purpose. And in a way, I was lucky because of the kind of development that I've had. I'm still able to teach. So even sitting there with one leg, telling everybody what I just crazy when you think about it. And I can understand someone saying to my students, "Why the hell do you train with him?" But I've still got something to teach. I've still got something that's got value. So in a way, my life has still got meaning and purpose. If I didn't have that meaning and purpose, I don't know. But I've most definitely got it. So one thing I would advise people is to look for that within your life, because it's like I know so many people, so many that have retired from work and allowed themselves to die.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know people in my own family that stopped taking their heart pills and things like that. They didn't, just didn't want to be around with the wife and go shopping, and life didn't have any meaning for them anymore. Yeah, so I would look for that depth in life. I would look for your life to have meaning and purpose. I think that's important.
yeah,
And meaning and purpose is not about you. It's not about the certificates you've got, the grades, the belts, the fans, the internet followers, or whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's got to be something very personal. It's not I built this up, so this is who I am, because that can be taken away from you by someone chopping off your leg. It's too easy. So I think looking for meaning and purpose in your life is something that is very important. And I know we're coming on to why did I write the book was one of the other questions that you
yeah.
wanted to ask me. But it's a good kind of segue there, that I had no intentions of writing a book. Everyone kept saying to me, "When you're going to write a book?" And I was like, "I don't write a book." I'm not really an author, because I write stuff on Facebook, and I'm like someone who'd write for the Sun. I write with jokes and
Right.
tits. It's but so I absolutely no intentions at all in writing a book. But then one day it just welled up inside of me, and I don't even know where it come from. And it just welled up inside, and I'm one of those people. I don't write unless I have a need to write. So I'm also not an author in that respect. I've had a lot of companies have come to me and people have come to me. Can you write a book about this? I've got no will to do that at all. I normally pass it off to other people,
Yeah.
and because I can't just write a book about something, it's got to be something inside of me that's burning to come out. And there wasn't anything until this came up inside, that
Yep.
I need to I need to say this,
So
because
everybody again.
yeah, I need to put it together. I'm teaching it in dribs and drabs, in lessons and coaching programs and so on. I'm teaching, but it's not cohesive. There's no synergy there. So it kind of welled up inside. You need to do this, to just put it together, as much for my own students and friends as anything else. And when I wrote it, of course, the feedback I got from most people was, this is great because it's like a full set of notes. I've been making notes of your stuff for years, but here is a full set of notes. So it actually had value. So, and I thought once I'd written that book, that was it. I thought I'm definitely never going to write another one.
Yeah.
And then the publisher, Simone, came back to me and said, looking at the concepts of karate books that you did with Toru, wouldn't it be good to republish those? And of course, I have a strong geary towards Toru. I mean, he did so much for me. And it's 25 years since he died. And no one talks about him. Even the people that were really close to him, no one mentions him. And yet he contributed so much to the karate and martial arts scene in general. As I said earlier, he was the first Japanese karateka to break away and form a multi-style organization that actually gave access to so many people. And in teaching, he was a genius. So I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. So I dug out the books, went through them. And of course, he was a linguist, so translation was important to him. So a lot of his books were translations, had value at the time because he was translating in a way that nobody else was. But now that it's common parlance. And he had a very scientific mind as well. So everything was in equations, which, to be honest, most martial artists don't really want anyway.
Yep.
Most of them wouldn't even understand them. I don't, half of them. So when I pulled the bones out of the books and put them together, there was only about 6,000 words. And of course, you need sort of at least 25, 30,000 words for a book. So I put it down, I thought, I can't do it. But then that kind of obligation it already started inside me. So I was thinking about it and I thought, well, let's put a dictionary of all these translations and this together to make a book. And I did that. But when I looked at it, I thought, no one's going to want to read this. So I put it down again and I thought, I can't do it. And then I'm wondering about it a bit more. And it's still inside me. Steve, you've got an obligation. This man did so much for you. And 25 years and nobody else is mentioning him. It's up to you to bring it out and bring it to the fore. So eventually what I thought was, I know what I'll do. I will categorize his teachings. I will simplify them, but I will show how he planted the seeds of everything I teach today, even in Tai Chi. Because when and even actually when I started to write the book, I realized there was so much that he did for me. Things I thought were my idea, he planted the seeds.
Yep.
So looking back, it was like, actually, I owe him even more than I thought I did. So the new book it's got stories of me and him. It's got stories. It's got a little bit of background to him as well. And it's going through what he taught and what it's done for me, where I've taken it from there. So his was the seed and mine was the flower for me.
Yep.
And I finished the book and I sent it off. And actually, it was only the day before yesterday, I suddenly thought, have I duplicated anything from soft front? Because you know what it's like, you write something and you forget you've written it. So I suddenly thought, I never compared the two. So I quickly scanned through both books.
Yep.
And luckily I didn't. I mean, there are cross references, but it's not like I've written the same book twice.
When can we expect that one? Do you know?
Well, it's they're just putting all the photographs and stuff together now. So I would imagine it's only going to be a couple of weeks. Simone said it will be on sale for Christmas, basically.
Brilliant.
So I should imagine in November it will be around.
I've got a couple of last questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And something I want to talking about. One thing I always advise all my students, but especially my black belt students, is to have a notebook. So again, if you're only listening on Spotify or whatever, I'm holding up my notebook, and if you're on YouTube, you can obviously see it. But as you were talking, this is my notebook that I call this kind of my. This is the one where if I see something you've written on Facebook, I'll take notes on this. Or if I've listened to a really good podcast, my notes go into this book. So this is what I've got. And right at the beginning of the notebook was a question that you asked, and I'm holding this up, so I'll explain what I've got. The question is, if you could choose to never have been born, would you?
Yeah.
And then what I've done is, just to show you that I actually went and done the homework, is actually notes that I'd started to take to try
Mm.
and get to an answer. I think, if memory serves me right, I don't know if I even sent you an answer, because I still don't know. I still don't know. And I've
Mm.
took notes and thought about it.
It's like a Zen koan.
What my question to you is, what does that question actually mean? So you tried to explain this to me on actual Facebook, but the question for the listeners again is, and maybe they can go away and meditate on this: if you could choose to never have been born, would you? And I think your first reaction is, well, of course I would want to be born, because. But I think I even said that to you at the time, and you corrected that. So what does it actually mean now that I've got you back in the chair?
Well, it is just that. It's a question to make you think. It's
Right.
a question it's a question that you can meditate on. A similar question would be, when you die, would you choose to be reborn?
Yep.
And I find that an interesting question. I ask my students because, and there's not a right answer. It's what it is you're going through your own feelings and emotions and how much you value the existence of the universe and life and so on. And one of my other sayings that I probably use quite a lot is that we die into this life to suffer and we're born out of it. But considering my life, I would say that, wouldn't I, really?
Okay. So for anybody listening, I absolutely promise you, you're listening to or watching two stand up integral martial
Comedians.
artists here who haven't made this up. But my next question, I've got two last curveballs for you, and it's as if you've actually seen my notes. So I'm going to leave this. It was actually the first one, but I'm going to leave that till the end. And in your notes and in your poetry and the posts that you do publicise, that one about death always hits me hard, and I always struggle and continue to struggle to get my head around it. So, two last questions, guys. Bear with us. And this one is, what happens when we die? That's my question. What happens when we die?
One of the most common questions that anybody has, and one of the best answers to it, is, what were you before you was born?
That's the bit that
Because
I don't understand.
because you
Yeah,
because you're going to be the same. Okay, so when we're talking about meditation, and if we're talking about the self being an illusion and so on, terminology that a lot use is that you can say that your emotions and your thinking mind belong to the body. So it's the machine of the body, isn't it? All your emotions, your anxiety, and everything else comes right the way down to a survival function that has really quite badly gone wrong as the human being has evolved. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, but
that's all right.
it's almost as if we were put on this earth. It's almost like God said, right, I'm going to put you on this earth. I'm going to give you self-awareness. So this means that you are minor gods. So you will be able to, because you've got a reflective conscious mind, you can care for the earth, you can care for the animals, you can care for each other, and you can make this place heaven. And basically, we fucked it up.
Yep.
But having that self-conscious mind, it's the gift and the curse that we've got. And I think that all this is the machinery of the body. I think Alan Watts said it extremely well when he said, you're an aperture through which the universe experiences itself. When you slow the thinking mind down so that it ceases to exist, when you reach that state of the wordless mind or absorption, you realize it's actually a universal consciousness. So what's actually looking out of your eyes is the consciousness of the universe. And that is it often described as the unborn, the immortal, whatever. But a thinking mind can only define something. So by its very nature, it can't define the infinite. So those kind of questions, what happens to you when you die? Where does the universe end? That's not for the thinking mind, it's for the non-thinking mind. So you've got to reduce the thinking activity of the thinking mind so that you can directly experience it. And when you directly experience it, you just know it. When you look at it, all of our ancient prophets, they tried to explain it by telling stories, by giving analogies, by sutras, by koans, by parables. They couldn't just say, this is what God or nature or universal energy is. You can't describe infinity, it's impossible. So the answer to the question is meditation is the answer, and have a direct experience of it, and you will know that there's not 1/1,000,000th of you inhabiting this body. So this body will just expire like you get rid of your car when it's gone. It's going to wear out. It's going to go. But and the you, obviously, your name and your character and your personality and so on, will disappear with the body. But everything that you are and have been and were still exists in immortal time as such. So it's a universal energy. When people would glibly say, "Yeah, I'm at one with the universe," that's exactly it. You couldn't say it better. And I think when you look in the eyes of any animal or even another person, when you look with those eyes, you see it's you. It's the same. And then you look around and you look at the way we treat each other and the way we treat animals and the things we've done to this world when we had the ability, we had the godlike ability to live really good, peaceful, happy lives. It's such a shame.
The okay, I'm coming to my last question, and I'll let you go. I'm enjoying this so much. Stephen Fry once said this really well, and I'm a huge Stephen Fry fan.
Mm.
Now you get that question about who would you invite to a dinner party? You can invite 4 people. He's always top of my list, but anyway, that's another story. And he was talking about uh, mental health, and he was talking about this is only came to my head because you were talking about animals there, and he was talking about mindfulness, and he said that it was cows. He was actually talking about cows in a field and how the cow's only purpose is to be a cow.
Mm.
And I think talking about treating animals well, like I kicked up a fuss the first 6 months that we got our dog, who you've seen us through the photos on Instagram and stuff. And then, and I grew up with dogs, but it just got in the way of my life, and we were too busy for a dog, and it was just affecting everything until I don't know what happened. And do you know, I don't even know why I'm mentioning this, to be fair, but that pleasure that an animal can give, and this is my point, by simply being an animal, by
Yeah.
simply being a dog.
Mm.
He's honestly, he's my best pal now. He really is my best pal. And see, when I think if there's something going on in the house or we've got a problem or whatever, I look at Jet and he is there just being a dog. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. It was
Well,
just a lovely way that Stephen Fry had put it that really made me think about it. Yeah,
that's the great thing. I mean, dogs are far superior to us, and
I'm finding
and
that.
yeah, yeah, and dog is God spelt backwards. Uh, that's a hint. There are angels without wings. So and dogs are lovely to watch because they're happy whatever they're doing. They're happy going out, they're happy coming in, they're happy going to sleep, they're happy playing, whatever. And they say if you want to know who loves you most, you know, lock your wife and the dog in the boot of a car for an hour and see who's pleased to see you.
Indeed. Right, do you know, that would be a brilliant place to end, but I really want to ask this last question, and then I promise that I'll let you go and we'll wrap up. And I believe that this is one of these questions that is so multi-layered that it is really for digesting, I guess, or really getting to. And it's a really, really simple question, but you're the man to answer it. What matters?
What matters
That's it. What matters?
in life in general?
So
What's
I
important?
possibly I've deliberately worded it like this because I've asked this to a number of my students, and I've actually started videoing it.
Mm,
I don't give them any more context to it. I just say
okay.
what matters, and I'm just the different responses. I'm going to make a wee sort of collage, a wee video up, and some people will say straight away that you're happy, that you've got money in the bank, that you can. Do
Good.
you know? And everybody's gave me a different answer. Uh,
Mm.
and it's getting back to that thing about if you have your health, you worry about a million things. If you don't have your health, you worry about one. And
I've got the question. Yeah, I actually ask a very similar one, but in a different way. And I would say, what is the purpose of doing martial arts? And people come up with self-defense, to get fit, to get healthy, for this and that. And then when they start to discuss it, they finally get to the purpose is to be happy. My answer to that is, if you're trying to be happy, you're not happy, and happiness can't exist without unhappiness. So actually, it's self-defeating. You've got to think further than that. You've got to think deeper than that. And so my answer is, what really matters is insight and wisdom. Wisdom is really important because then you realize what actually matters, because you can see through the farce of the life that we live. The idea that you're supposed to be chasing happiness, that you're not really happy to. I would often say it's like a man with a jewel stuck between his eyes, searching the world for precious jewels. You've actually got it. You've got what's important. What's happened is you've been indoctrinated by family, friends, job, media. You've been indoctrinated to be unhappy, to be a certain way. So actually, the important thing is to have the insight and the wisdom to be able to see the truth, to be able to cut right the way through. And like I said, we human beings, we've got the capacity to have peace. If people say, "Oh, the people are at war and you're never going to have peace," we've got the capacity to do it. And if we could educate people enough in enough numbers, then it's the numbers of people count. You know, the people's vote, the people's voice, the politicians arise as a result of what the people want. At the moment, it's the other way around, isn't it? They're telling us what we want. But actually, when we find our voice and we tell them what we want, when we get rid of countries and borders and money and all that, there's more than enough stuff in this world for everyone to have a roof over their head, medical aid, to food on their table and a decent life. It's only the fact that a very small amount of people are holding it off in some corner and then making everybody else fight amongst themselves. So I think insight and wisdom are the things that I would look for. That's what I try to promote. See through the bullshit. And if you can do that, then generally everyone would have a much better life.
brilliant, Steve. Uh, we've went well over an hour, I think, already. I haven't even been timing it, but just what a brilliant conversation again. Just before I let you sign off, as I say, I've got a copy of Soft Front, Strong Back here, which is available on Amazon. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And are signed copies still available from yourself?
Yeah, there's a link that you can go to. And the concepts of karate
Yeah, please.
will come out within the next couple of weeks. I'm sure you'll see it because it'll be all over Facebook. I'll make sure of that.
Perfect.
And you'll be able to buy signed copies. And actually, you'll probably be able to buy both put together to make a fabulous Christmas present. for someone.
Perfect. So all of that information will be on Steve's social media. Just the very last thing before we sign off, Steve Rowe, available on Facebook. Your Instagram handle is Shicon Boss, is it still?
Shikon Boss, yeah.
Shicon Boss, sorry, my apologies. Same handle on Twitter as well, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And your website, Steve, just before we say cheerio, is...
if you use, actually my blog is steve-rowe.com.
Perfect.
And then, of course, there's Medway Martial Arts, shikon.com. There's a few.
Perfect. Right, Steve, thank you so much for being a guest again.
Thank you.
It's been absolutely brilliant. I've loved it. Thank you.
That was fun.
Have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your week, Steve. God bless you.
Will
Thank
do.
you.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.